The first time I held the dress I would not be allowed to wear, I was 9 years old. It was a Sunday in October. My mother had been upstairs for an hour. When she came down, there was a piece of tissue paper stuck to her sleeve. She smelled like cedar and lavender. The two smells I would, by the time I was 30, learn to associate with every important moment of my life. She set a long white box on the dining room table. She opened the lid. She folded back the tissue. "Lena," she said, "this was your grandmother's. Then it was mine. Then, if you choose, it will be yours." The dress was old. The pearls at the shoulder had been rest-stitched at least once. The seam at the back had been moved an inch to the left to fit a body that was not symmetrical. A fold was tacked into the waist where no body had yet worn it. Not bright white, the color of the inside of an oyster. A scoop neck that had been let out, then taken in. Lace at the cuffs that was different from the lace at the hem. Whoever had altered it had done it the way a person writes a letter to someone they have lost, with the patience of someone who believes that objects can be homes for the dead. "Mom," I said, "it's beautiful. It's been waiting for you," she said. I closed the box without touching it. I went to my room. I lay on my bed and tried to imagine the woman who would one day stand beside me while I put it on. I tried to picture her face. I tried to picture her hands. I tried to picture the sound of her voice saying my name before the dress went on, and the sound of her voice saying my name after. I could not. She was not yet born. She was a future I had to invent and trust. I did not yet know that the woman would be my sister. When I was 16, my mother died. It was sudden. Aneurysm. She was standing at the kitchen sink. She had been humming. I learned that later from Maya, who had been in the upstairs hallway. The humming had been the song my mother had played for me every night when I was small. The song without a name. The song that had come across the ocean from a man in Zagreb in 1931 that my grandmother had taught, that my mother had taught me, that Maya had been told she could not learn. She said my name once. Then she did not say anything else. Maya, who was 19, sat on the upstairs hallway floor and screamed into a pillow so the neighbors wouldn't hear. Then she got up, wiped her face, walked downstairs, and began the long, quiet work of keeping the house alive. She signed my permission slips. She packed my lunches. She drove past my school every morning at 8:15 and watched me walk in through the front doors from the corner of Maple and Vine. She paid the oil bill in November. She paid the insurance when the policy was about to lapse. She did this for 7 years on the salary of a bank teller. She did not complain. She did not ask for help. She did not tell me, even once, that she was tired. She did not tell me, even once, that she had spent an evening pacing the kitchen in the dark. She did not tell me that on Sundays, in the upstairs bathroom with the door locked, she stood at the window and watched the same Maple Street where we had walked to school, and she cried the way she cried the morning our mother died. Silently, completely, into a folded towel so the walls would not keep the sound. She also did not tell me that she had, 2 weeks after the funeral, walked into Rosalind's Diner on 9th Street, climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor, knocked on the door with the piece of masking tape that said 4B, and signed a loan agreement with a man named Avi Rothman, a loan she would pay for the rest of her life. I met Adrian at 22 in the university library. He was not the kind of boy I had imagined. I had imagined someone who played the guitar badly and well at the same time. Adrian was the kind of boy who showed up on time, who remembered birthdays and mailed cards, who never once forgot to call his mother on a Sunday. He had dark brown hair that fell slightly into his eyes, a small scar above his left eyebrow from a bicycle fall at age 11, a way of listening that made you feel, suddenly, that everything you had been saying was important. He proposed on the roof of our apartment. He opened a small box. He held out a thin gold ring with a small, almost invisible diamond. "Lena," he said, "I would like to spend the rest of my life with you." "Yes," I said. I did not hesitate. It was the easiest word I had ever spoken. The next morning, I called Maya. "I'm going to wear Mom's dress." There was a long silence on the line. "Lena, Lena, Lena." "What is it, Maya?" "The dress," she said, very quietly. "I need to tell you something. 3 weeks before the wedding, I went to Mrs. Aldridge's shop to pick up the dress. Mrs. Aldridge was the seamstress who had been rest-stitching the pearls, taking in the bodice by 1.5 inches, letting out the waist by 3/4, replacing the lining under the arms. The bell over her door rang. Mrs. Aldridge came out from behind the curtain. "Miss Holloway," she said, "there is no dress." "No dress?" "The dress is gone. It was taken out of the shop 2 weeks ago by a woman who said she was your sister." I sat down on the velvet bench in the front of the shop. I did not cry. I did not scream. I sat. The bell over the door was very still. There was a single rose on the counter in a glass vase. The clock on the wall ticked. I could hear, faintly, the radio behind the curtain. Then I called Maya. We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment. She was already sitting at the table when I walked in. She had her coat on. She had not removed her scarf. She held a paper cup with both hands. She would not look up. "I sold your dress, Lena." "Why?" "Because I owed a man $47,000. $47,000. She said it the way other people say 12 minutes. "Who?" "His name is Avi Rothman." "Who is Avi Rothman?" "A man I borrowed $40,000 from 17 years ago. The year Mom died." "Why did you need money, Maya?" She looked up. Her eyes were red around the edges. She had been crying for hours, I could tell. "To pay for her funeral." I did not say anything for a long time. There was a woman behind the counter grinding coffee. There was a child somewhere in the back of the shop laughing. There was a small bell on the door that went off every time somebody walked in. There was the sound of a refrigerator hum. The world, I thought, was still going. The world was still making coffee for people in paper cups. We sat for a long time. "Maya, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was ashamed." And then, when I was no longer ashamed, I was afraid. And then, when I was no longer afraid, I was in too deep. I went home. I lay on my bed. I stared at the ceiling. I thought about how Maya had been 19 when our mother died. I thought about how she had signed a piece of paper that charged 62% interest a year, compounded weekly. I thought about how she had walked into Avi Rothman's office every week for 17 years, in every kind of weather, on every kind of birthday, on every Christmas, on every anniversary of our mother's death, and had handed him an envelope of cash and had walked out again. I thought about how she had done this on the salary of a bank teller. I thought about how she had done this on Sundays, after she had hung up the phone from talking to me for an hour. I thought about how she had done this on the night before my college graduation. I thought about how she had done this on the morning of my first job interview. Maya had been carrying this since she was 19. Maya had been 19, and our mother had just died, and there had been no money. And Maya had walked into a diner and climbed the stairs and signed her name on a paper that charged 62% interest a year, compounded weekly. Maya had been paying Avi Rothman every week for 17 years. She had done this so that I could grow up. The next morning, I went alone to Avi Rothman's office. I climbed the narrow stairs. They smelled of old cooking oil. I knocked on the door with the masking tape number. I went in. He was older than I had expected. Late 60s. Small gray beard. Sailboat picture on the wall. He was wearing a button-down shirt and no tie. He had the kind of face that looked like it had been smelted from something hard, then softened by years of use. "Miss Holloway," he said. "Please, sit down, Mr. Rothman. Did you ever intend to let my sister out of the loan?" "No." "Did you ever intend to forgive her debt?" "No." "What did you intend to do?" He leaned back in his chair. He folded his hands across his chest. He said, very quietly, "I intended to keep her." "Keep her for what?" "For the leverage, Miss Holloway. For the leverage. Avi Rothman does not lend money for the money. Avi Rothman lends money for the leverage." I went home. I sat at the kitchen table. I wrote on the back of an envelope, in my own handwriting, the words, "I want to understand what happened." That night, Adrian and I sat at the kitchen table. I told him everything. He did not interrupt. He did not tell me it would be okay. He did not tell me that things would work out. He poured 2 glasses of wine from a bottle that had been sitting in the refrigerator door for 2 months. "What do you want to do?" he said. "I want to buy the dress back." "The dress? Lena? The dress?" "Why the dress?" "Because the dress was the only thing," Maya told me on the phone, "that she could not bear to give up. When she sold it, she wept in the shop for an hour. The dress was the last piece of Mom. The dress was the only thing Maya had left of her mother. If I buy the dress back, she will know that I understand. She will know that I understand she was not selling my wedding. She was saying goodbye to hers. Adrian reached across the table. He took my hand. Then buy it back. The woman in Chicago was named Mrs. Zola. She collected vintage gowns. She had a small apartment in Lincoln Park filled floor to ceiling with racks of dresses, everyone wrapped in tissue paper, everyone cataloged in a hand-typed ledger. She was an elegant woman with silver hair pulled back in a low bun. She brought us tea in thin porcelain cups. I flew out the next morning. I paid $22,000. Mrs. Zola had bought the dress from Maya for $19,000. I wrapped the dress in the box I had brought with me. I flew home. I held the box on my lap for the entire flight. Adrian, who had come with me, kept his hand on the box the whole way. He did not say a word. I called Maya from the airport. Come to the apartment, Maya. She came that night. I brought her to the bedroom. I set the box on the bed. I opened it. Maya stood in the doorway. She would not come all the way into the room. She stood at the threshold, the way a person stands at the threshold of a house they have not entered in a long time, the way a person stands at the threshold of a memory. She put her hand on the sleeve. She ran her finger along the embroidery at the shoulder. She began to cry. It was the first time I had seen my sister cry since the day my mother died. We got married 3 weeks later. It was a small wedding. It was in the garden of the house on Cherry Lane. Adrian's family flew in from Zagreb. Maya sat in the front row in a navy blue dress, holding a single white peony in her hand. When I came out of the house in my mother's dress, Maya stood up. She did not say a word. She put her hand over her mouth and cried. Adrian was at the altar. He was wearing a gray suit. He was holding a small bunch of wildflowers he had picked from the side of the road. We said our vows. We said the same vows his grandmother and my grandmother had said 60 years earlier in 2 different countries, in 2 different languages, in 2 different centuries. We danced. We ate cake. We stayed up until 2 in the morning under the string lights in my mother's garden with Adrian's family who did not speak English well laughing in the kitchen. Maya danced with Adrian's father. Maya danced with Adrian's brother-in-law. Maya danced twice with me. At the end of the night, she pulled me aside. Lena, thank you. For what? For buying the dress back. I would buy it back 1,000 times, Maya. I know, she smiled. It was the first smile I had seen from her since the day I came back from Chicago. That's why I love you. The morning after the wedding, I woke up at 6. The kitchen was still messy from the night before. There were flowers everywhere. Adrian was not awake. Maya was not awake. There was a small car parked at the end of the driveway. I had not noticed it the night before. I walked outside. I walked down the driveway. A man was sitting in the driver's seat. The window was rolled down. It was Avi Rothman. I walked to the edge of the driveway. I did not move toward the car. I did not move away from it. Mr. Rothman, what are you doing here? I came to return this. He opened the trunk. Inside was a small brown box. What is it? It is what your mother left in my care 23 years ago. I had forgotten about it until last week. I am old, Miss Holloway. I forget things. Your mother asked me to hold this for her. She asked me to give it to you when you got married. I opened the box. Inside was a piece of notebook paper, folded twice. The paper was written in my mother's handwriting. It said, Lena, when you wear the dress, remember that the dress is not a dress. The dress is the 3 of us. Grandmother, me, you. We made the dress. We altered the dress. We waited in the dress. We are in the dress. Do not forget me. I stood at the end of the driveway. I held the letter. I cried. Avi Rothman got back in the car. He rolled down the window one more time. Your mother was a very fine woman, Miss Holloway. I'm sorry I never told her that when she was alive. Then he drove away. 3 months later, I was standing in the guest room of the house on Cherry Lane. The dress was on a hanger. The pearls were still attached at the shoulder. The hem had been cleaned. The waist had been let out. The lining under the arms had been replaced. The bodice had been taken in by 1.5 inches. The fold was still tacked into the waist, where no body had yet worn it. The tuck was still taken into the shoulder. Both were invisible. Whoever had altered it had done it the way a person writes a letter to someone they have lost. I put my hand on the sleeve. It smelled like cedar and lavender and white tea. It smelled, faintly, of my mother. I thought about my grandmother, who had been 19 in 1948 in front of a small white clapboard church. I thought about my mother, who had been 23 in 1971 holding a single peony. I thought about Maya, who had wept in a consignment shop. I thought about Adrian, who had listened. I thought about Mrs. Aldridge, who had rest-stitched the pearls. I thought about Avi Rothman, who had been paid. I thought about how the dress had survived 19 years. I thought about how it had been worn by 3 women. I thought about how, one day, it might be worn by a 4th, by a daughter I did not yet have, by a daughter who might, one day, stand in front of this dress and ask her grandmother, "Mom, can I wear this to my wedding?" I thought about how the dress is not a dress. The dress is the family. The dress is the inheritance. The dress is the debt. The dress is the love. The dress is the way we remember the women we have lost. Then I tucked the dress back into its tissue paper. I closed the box. I put the box back on the shelf. I walked out of the room. I closed the door. Maya would come over later. She would bring Adrian her famous lemon bars. She would talk about her new job. She would ask me about the dress. I would say the dress was safe. She would say good. I would say good. We would sit in my mother's kitchen, drinking tea, 2 sisters, no debt. The dress was on the shelf. The dress was waiting. It had been waiting for 20 years. It would wait a little while longer.